The year, 2003. The date, July 15th. And the time had finally arrived. The game I'd been waiting for so long was here. Knights of the Old Republic. To give you an idea of how old I am, I was old enough to play it, but not old enough to drive myself to get it, so I got a ride to Best Buy, and there it was. When I asked an employee to grab it for me, he smirked and said, "Ah, this game." It was a big deal. I played it all night, then all day, then all night, then all day, and so on. 20 years on, Knights of the Old Republic, or KOTOR for short, sits comfortably in the pantheon of gaming history as one of the greatest, most influential RPGs, certainly one of the best Star Wars games, period. By our standards, KOTOR looks rudimentary, plays awkwardly, and doesn't necessarily do anything we've never seen before by this point now. But for people who haven't experienced it, to overlook it would be a big mistake, because on this 20th anniversary, the game is so special, not just because of what it did, but because of what it can still teach creatives today. Now, the RPG, or role-playing game genre, was not invented in '03. They'd been around for decades by that point already, in pen and paper format, and then on PC. What was a little novel, though, was an RPG on home console, like the Xbox. Because the genre is more complicated than, say, a shooter where you just point and click. In order to play a role, you need to be able to create a character, their appearance, their abilities, their personality, and you needed the freedom to make choices and form relationships. So it was hard to do all that on something as limiting as a controller and hardware like an Xbox or a PlayStation 2. Not that it never happened, obviously. You still had the Final Fantasy series and the Elder Scrolls by that point, but games like Baldur's Gate, Fallout, and Diablo were on PC. Things began to change, though, when a Canadian game developer called BioWare, responsible for Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, published a third-person RPG set in the Star Wars universe, specifically 4,000 years before the events of George Lucas's movies. In it, the player was treated to character creation, D&D style stats, branching dialogue options, branching narrative, fully voiced characters, freedom of choice on how to play and where to go, and many other things. And you could experience it all on your Xbox.
Well, I would think that...
It doesn't matter what you think, Bill.
Real quick, Patient Gamer here on YouTube was generous enough to let me use their gameplay footage, so a big shout out to them. I'm compiling gameplay footage of my own for future videos from various games, but I just don't have time to blast through a game nowadays, so I'm very grateful for them. If you're interested in KOTOR but don't have the time either, or are put off by some of its dated aspects and you can't really get into it, you should totally watch Patient Gamer's playthrough of it. It's the whole game with no commentary, combat and game mechanics can become dated, but a good story with good voice acting does not. So if you only have one like and subscribe to spare, go ahead and give it to them because they made this video possible. And some good news if you like KOTOR content. I realized while writing this that it'd be a pretty long script to cover everything I want to in one go, and I wouldn't be able to push anything out as timely as I'd like, so I decided to split it up. You know, pull the old George Lucas. Let's make a meal out of this 20th anniversary. In this video, we'll dive into the endlessly compelling lore and setting of the game. The player is literally dropped in the middle of a war zone to start. As the title crawl lets us know, the galaxy is at war. But it's different from the wars of any of the three trilogies. This is between the Sith Empire and the Republic, two behemoths, as opposed to one big Goliath and an underdog or a manufactured war between droids and clones. There's a rich history in KOTOR that informs its world and its drama. You can feel it. You see, this war, labeled the Jedi Civil War in the next game, was born out of another one, a noble crusade. 5 years before the events of KOTOR, the warmongering Mandalorians began a war of conquest against the Republic, capturing and butchering planet after planet. The Republic went to the Jedi for help, but the Jedi Council pleaded for patience and caution. War is not the Jedi way, and the Council was not about to run headlong into the conflict. They were worried of unforeseen consequences, and they were hesitant to get into another war some years after a devastating one that split the Order. But two young Jedi Knights, Revan and Malak, refused to stand by and watch innocent people suffer and die So they rallied their own force of fellow Jedi to march off to war against the wishes of the Council. In the end, they made all the difference and pushed the Mandalorians back, winning the war. Even then, the Jedi Council still stood by its decision to stay out of the fighting. With the Republic rebuilding from that devastating war, Revan and Malak made the unexpected decision to take their fleet into unexplored space, disappearing into the void. Many thought them lost forever, suffering some horrible fate. But what happened next, nobody could have predicted. Revan and Malak eventually returned, but with a massive new fighting force behind them, and used it against the Republic. The heroes were now conquerors. And this is where the game starts, deep in this new war. The Republic is formidable, but critically injured from the Mandalorians. Imagine World War II breaking out while Europe was still rebuilding from World War I. And even heroes aren't good enough during this time. As one of your companions says, if you can't trust the best of the Jedi, who can you trust? It's a very compelling setting, especially for a Star Wars game. The world seems big because you feel like your character, again, whom you created, has been dropped into a living history. A lesson that Lucasfilm Games could take from KOTOR then would be to open up the universe more fully. Let's get away from the Skywalker timeline and explore other things. Shake up the formula a little bit. Inject some gray areas into the narrative as well. The Council could have ended the war sooner had they joined the fight at the outset, but ultimately something did corrupt the knights who disobeyed them and fought the Mandalorians. They were kind of right. Revan and Malak came back as bigger threats. But then again, hundreds, if not thousands of people suffered and died because of their cautiousness. The High Republic era, set 2 centuries before the movies, still holds some promise in that area, and we'll see how Lucasfilm's upcoming show The Acolyte does, but so far it's not had the sort of impact KOTOR did in igniting imaginations. My brutally honest, bite-sized opinion on the High Republic, though, is I've tried to get through Light of the Jedi 3 separate times, twice in conventional format and once in audiobook, and I just cannot get through it. And I, usually like to read, so take that however you want. Maybe I just don't click with that particular author's style. So there. KOTOR provided a universe heavy with lore to get lost in, but it also gave you interesting locations in which to roam. There was Taris, a human-centric mega-metropolis planet blockaded by the Sith fleet. It's a living metaphor of our society where the elite class gets to live at the top in the sun. They're out of touch and apathetic towards those below them, in this case, literally. The lower levels are dominated by gangs and colored by violence. The aliens of Taris are left to scrape together a desperate existence. Worse off than them, though, are the citizens of the Undercity on the planet's dark surface, the outcasts. Largely descendants of criminals banished from the upper city, they've been left to live in the dust and eke out a terrifying existence side by side with Rakghoul beasts who transmit their horrible disease with a single bite. And then there was Dantooine, a peaceful agricultural planet, home to the Jedi Academy. But the planet's simple farmers are beset by Mandalorian raiders, leftovers from the war. Raiders the Jedi have been slow to stop, being so focused on this current galactic threat. An institution that's supposed to protect its people but fails to again and again. Most of us know how those farmers feel. And then from Dantooine we could go to Tatooine. The desert planet has been done to death by this point, but even now the game shows a refreshing side of it, giving the player a fascinating look at Tusken Raider society and culture. The Raiders, speaking of, are locked in a struggle with the greedy Zerka Corporation, who is plundering the planet for its resources. It's not a dynamic we haven't seen before or since, but it is rare to see the Sand People humanized so much. From there, we could go to Kashyyyk, the Wookiee homeworld, but the Wookiees don't even own their own home. In fact, they don't even own themselves. The aforementioned Zerka Corporation has enslaved the forest planet's Wookiees, villainously separating families and selling them across the galaxy. Whether it be Tatooine or Kashyyyk, Zerka exists to plunder and exploit. People would probably describe some companies we know of in the same way. From Kashyyyk, we could go to Manan, the galaxy's neutral water world. A dazzling blue jewel, Manan is home to an aquatic race known as the Selkath. They can maintain their neutrality in the war because their planet is the only known source of Kolto, an immensely effective healing substance harvested from its oceans. and they sell it to both sides. Both the Sith and the Republic have a presence there, and the atmosphere is tense. Manon is the only place in the galaxy where the war is cold, fought by proxy and subterfuge. But don't be fooled, there is plenty of danger lurking around every corner, especially in the planet's watery depths, where an ancient force has recently awakened. And then we had Korriban, the Sith homeworld, dotted with ancient ruins and tombs. The planet houses the Sith Academy, a dark, twisted version of the Academy on Dantooine. Here, students learn the dark side of the Force, and few live to tell about it. The Valley of the Dark Lords is a mirror of our Valley of the Kings in Egypt. Only here, each tomb is terribly dangerous, containing traps, secrets, and sentinels that guard each one's plunder viciously. And many a headstrong student venturing into the tombs has found out the hard way that not everything buried is dead and gone. There are other locales which I won't get into for the sake of spoilers, but these are some of the main backdrops of your dramatic adventure, and they can be visited at will in any order at any time. Not only that, but you can have an effect on each one. For instance, will Dantooine find peace from the Raiders? Will Zerka and the Tusken Raiders come to terms? Will the Wookiees continue as slaves? Can Manon maintain its precarious neutral status? And will Korriban's Academy continue its corrosive curriculum? These are questions that you as the player will have a hand in answering. That is the joy of a fleshed out, fully realized world crafted with care. A lesson for storytellers and creatives going forward: anchor your worlds in reality. We should see ourselves in it, our struggles, our fears, and ideals. Blasters and ships are fun, but those are condiments. Worlds that feel like they didn't spring up yesterday, that's the meat. And that's what George Lucas brought to the table way back in 1977. Relatable, lived-in settings are the fusion reaction that infinitely fuels quality narratives, and it'll never go out of style, even 20 years on. But that's just the lore and setting of the game. Next chapter will delve into the characters, who are even more fully realized than the worlds they jump between. A big thanks again to Patient Gamer for letting me use their footage. Again, if playing the game yourself is a big ask, why not sit back and enjoy a good Let's Play? Incidentally, I'm toying with the idea of playing through this game, at least in part, on maybe a live stream or something sometime in the not too distant future, hopefully. Just let me know if that's something you'd be interested in. So if you'd like a good XP boost, leave a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't already, and feel free to share this channel with folks you think might like it. Tell them to drop in and say hi. And this video does not have a sponsor, but I would like to put in a plug for myself. I'm available for editing for YouTube, podcasts, writing, voiceovers, slideshows, and if anybody would like to get in touch and maybe have a discussion about that, then definitely drop me an email. My contact information is on my page. It's available. I'll put a link for it in the show notes. Let me know what you need, and we can go from there. But for now, stay tough, and stop by again sometime.